Hi, welcome to Chassis Embassy, a channel dedicated to educate you in economics, business and finance, investment and entrepreneurship, and geopolitics. In this series, we shall be discussing inflation and your economy. Why inflation? Inflation is a very significant phenomenon in our day-to-day life as business people, as forex traders, as finance people, as accountants, and entrepreneurs. Inflation affects our personal income. Inflation affects our purchasing power. Inflation affects our money or income. Inflation affects our business. Inflation affects our investments. And inflation affects our budgets as a nation, as an individual, and even as a business. What is inflation? Let's try to define inflation. Inflation is the persistent increase or rise in the general price level of goods and services in an economy. For prices to be classified or defined as going through an inflationary period, or for an economy to be described as going through an inflationary period, there are two conditions that must be fulfilled. Number one is there has to be a consistent or persistent increase in the general prices. And secondly is that the prices must not be allocated, the price increase should not be related to only one product. It must be general goods in the markets. That is why we say in the general prices of goods and services, the rise or persistent increase in the price of goods and services in the economy generally. Now, let's look at various types of inflation. We are going to look at inflation according to the rate at which they increase. We are going to consider various types of inflation and understand them one after the other. Number one, we have what we call creeping or mild inflation. What is creeping or mild inflation? Creeping or mild inflation is a type of inflation where prices rise at a very low or gradual or very small rate, usually between 1 to 4%. This is mostly not noticed until indices are compiled, and we refer to this as mild inflation. Then we have suppressed inflation as a second type of inflation according to the rate at which they increase. Suppressed type of inflation is a type of inflation which occur at the rate which prices are rising within a reasonable limit and therefore can be controlled by appropriate measures like price control or rationing in an economy. The third type of inflation is persistent inflation. What is persistent inflation? Persistent inflation is a type of inflation where the increase in the price are likely to perpetuate or sustain itself. This type of inflation leads to agitation for higher wages among workers, which leads to increase in the cost of production, resulting to further increase in prices in an economy. The fourth type of inflation is what we call galloping inflation. Galloping inflation is also referred to as hyperinflation or runaway inflation. This is a type of inflation that occurs where prices rise so fast and high that money fails to function as a medium of exchange. With this type of inflation, price can rise twice or thrice, etc. in a day. These are three digits inflation like 127% to 150% or even 500%. Example is what happened in 1920 to 1923 in Germany and in Russia, where inflation was so high that money loses its function as a medium of exchange and consumers have to turn to barter trade, that is changing goods for goods or service for services. The last type of inflation, which in this series we want to consider, is stagflation or stampflation. What is stagflation? We say stagflation is a situation where the price increase so high and is coupled with a higher rate of what? Unemployment, just as it happened in the 70s and in the 80s in the world, where there was a high rate of unemployment, especially in Africa. At that time, the economies of most African countries, came to a halt. Unemployment was so high and nothing was working. So this is what we call stagflation. There is stagnation in economy. These are the various type of inflation that a country may go through. We don't know what type of inflation that the many countries are going through as a result of the Ukraine and Russia war, where prices of goods and services have increased and so many things are happening. Interest rates has gone high. Sometime in 13 years, inflation has gone high. Even the largest economy in the world, the United States of America, inflation has gone high to 40 years. And we need to understand how inflation affects our economy, our personal income. So let's stay tuned and subscribe to this channel and learn more as we digest the topic on inflation and how we can manage it in an economy. Thank you, and continue to subscribe to our channel.